Story from the Daily Record has Scots divided over the great constitutional question of our time. Should England kick Scotland out of the Union, Andrew?
Well, I mean, do you want me to answer that? Because it's not for me to decide.
Definitely
of course,
not.
It is for the people of Scotland to decide. And this is the latest findings are suggesting that it's deadlocked. So it's sort of 50-50 either way. And there's all sorts of things to consider. One of the good things, I think, about Scottish independence is it would make the SNP obsolete. That would be great. Because their record is so absolutely appalling. I mean, just in terms of their rising drug problems in Scotland, which they've failed to get a grip of, the falling standards of literacy and numeracy, the underspending on the NHS, the fact that they're not prioritising that, their hate speech bill, which they put through this year, the most draconian of its kind, which criminalises private speech within your own home. There's a real issue with the SNP.
You're not a fan.
And actually, the imagery is that Boris Johnson's had a really bad COVID pandemic, but whether it's Freedom Day or light restrictions over Christmas and New Year, England has actually led the way in the whole of the UK when it comes to handling COVID.
And exactly, so there's the draconianism of Nicola Sturgeon when it comes to COVID as well. The problem here, of course, is they exist. The reason why they are successful is the popularity of the potential for Scottish independence, and people are willing. I know people who are all comedians in Scotland are pro-SNP, right? And they all say that they support them because of the independence issue, but they have real reservations about all these other things. And I think when you've got this kind of one-party situation, it's never good for any kind of democracy. So I'd love to see that sort of change.
I'm starting to feel like it's inevitable that we'll have Scottish independence. Like you said, we saw the difference with the COVID restrictions, how we dealt with them. That was a marked difference. You've got the fact that they don't like the Tories, they hate Johnson, they want to stay in the EU, which is a key point. The Scottish Conservative Party even starts to feel separate now.
Yeah.
And, of course, they say, Ian Blackford's very keen to say that it's not about hating English people being in the SNP, but then again, that did make the papers as a story, which suggests it might be a bit of an issue for them. But, yeah, I'm not saying they do, but, I wonder. I mean, here's a whimsical point. When I grew up, we used to talk about ourselves as English. We were told we were English. We used to always write English in the forms. And then at some point, I feel like around Blair's time, it became British. But you'd never get a Scottish person saying they're British, would you? Or even a Welsh person, probably.
Sometimes. Gordon
But
Brown.
an English person would say they're British. And it's almost like frowned upon to say you're
Britishness is like an English idea almost.
Well, I'm just wondering, it's almost like frowned upon to say you're English now, isn't it? Because it's got some sort of bad association. But you would never get... What do you think?
Isn't it more just that there's a kind of fun in sort of being sort of from the smaller nation? Like, I remember when I was in Wales once and there was a bargain basement in Woolworths with videos, old videos, and one of them was Welsh rugby victories against the English. It was an actual video you could buy.
Brilliant.
And I thought that's kind of harmless fun, isn't it? It's like, because this is the country that isn't historically as powerful as England, so I don't know if that's really... But I think it's interesting what you say about them the SNP defining themselves against the English, which I think is relevant when it comes to the Brexit debate. And it's also relevant because, of course, this story in the Daily Record, the fact that the momentum for Scottish independence is back up again is largely because the SNP have framed or reframed the question of Scottish independence as a question on the back of Brexit. In other words, we need independence so that we can rejoin the EU. But how preposterous to say that you want to seek your independence by joining a big bureaucratic, undemocratic bloc.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible country.
Although, if it were to happen, I don't want it to happen. I've lived in Scotland for 4 years, incredible country, and I love the Union.
I've got Scottish cousins. Let's just get all that part in. Not anti-Scotland.
And do you want independence because you want to get rid of them, or what?
No, I don't want it. If Scottish
you don't have to speak to them anymore.
If the Scottish people want it, of course they have to be granted it. But I'm not saying I want it by any means.
Yeah, and I don't want it to happen. But one positive is that in the end, you'd have these different countries and these different nationalities, and Scotland would enter the EU, and then the EU would have to sort out an issue about the single market and the border, and that would get rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol.
All right,
because
interesting.
Scotland would be connected to England, which is not in the single market. Sort that one out, Brussels.
Yeah.
But do you really think it's to do with Brexit or to do with Johnson's recent dip in popularity?
I think there's that as well.
Okay.
Is dip the right word? I think collapse?
Yeah, I mean, complete free fall.
I'm being generous. I'm
Earthquake?
saying dip.
But I think there's good reasons for English people want to retain the union. I mean, for one thing, with sports, we can claim all the Scottish sporting stuff. We can claim Sheena Easton as one of ours.
That was funny. When we were in the Euros, we were England. Donald Trump said, and they're playing as England. That's interesting. You don't hear that word a lot. We were England. But you're right, we can claim more people.
I don't like the idea of a hefty levy on Tunnock's tea cakes. I don't fancy that too much.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we eat an almost toxic amount of those things.
Yeah.
They sort of just dissolve in your mouth. It's almost a metaphysical experience eating a Tunnock's tea cake. Didn't Tunnock's get in trouble for calling their product a great British product?
They did. They've been in trouble a few times, actually, Tunnock's. I can't remember now why, but I can't eat them because they've got gelatin in. So
you're on this vegan kick?
No, it's not a kick. I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian before it was fashionable. I'm a trendsetter.
You're not, Andrew. I'm beginning to think you're none of the things I've read about you on Twitter.
I know, it's weird.
I thought you
isn't
were
it?
a carnivorous, heterosexual monster.
Right-wing, public school educated
Yeah.
monster. Yeah, I know.
Those are the DMs I've been receiving.
I'm trying to grow into that role because that's what everyone tells me I am.
He doesn't even eat gelatin, guys.
Wow. I'm quite happy. I'm taking out of this that Tunnocks tea cakes have got protein in them. That's one of your 5 a day. Happy days.